Welcome back, everybody. Today we will be discussing the Yeezy 700 Sun. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Yeezy 700 Sun and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications just so you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates like this, shock drops, raffles, Sitelists, etc., follow my Twitter KeithAdam10 and also personals for you. This way, you're always in the loop 24/7, such as the drop on the dunks that we actually had today. For those who don't know, the Yeezy 700 Sun drops on January 23rd. This is a very unique 700 drop because it's the very first Yeezy 700 V1 at a retail with $240, which is $60 less than the normal retail of $300. What's even more interesting is that these actually have very high demand, which we'll be discussing more in depth soon. You could currently enter the Adidas online raffle for now, and you can also go for these on Yeezy Supply at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on the release day. Otherwise, you may be watching this video after the drop. In that case, let's move on. In order to determine if the Yeezy 700 Sun will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding. Not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather just the hold margin over X period of time. Essentially, is it really worth your time even if they do end up going up? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, regarding stock, since this is not a Nike item, I cannot confirm the exact number, but based off the majority of 700 V1s that have released in the past, or just Yeezys in general, it's certainly going to be quite high. Also, the fact that they made a lower retail for these leads me to believe that they're going to try to sell a decent amount of these just from a marketing perspective. Evidently, demand on these is very high based off the current pre-sale prices. More importantly, just like most Yeezys, the volume is very impressive for a pre-drop item, and it's actually holding up really well right now in terms of pre-sale. Demand on Yeezy 700 always tends to be quite high, but the primary issue in regards to resale always derived from the retail being too high at $300. Now, with the $60 discount on these, on the other hand, since the retail is only $240, I'm confident that you should be able to make a decent profit off of these with a subpar margin at least. And of course, you should be focusing on sizes under 8 rather than the larger sizes. We'll discuss that a little more later too. Now, regarding a specific range, since we are 2 days out from the drop as of me recording this, we have already experienced the vast majority of the decline in price from the pre-sellers. This is a somewhat unique pre-sale market compared to what we often see on many Yeezy drops though, based off of what retailers are receiving these, or the ones that aren't receiving these, I should say. This is leaving the pre-sale market with a little less than usual competition for a sneaker with this caliber of volume. For example, foot sites often contribute to a linear decrease leading up to the drop. They're always some of the biggest influencers, but we don't see that in this case. For that reason, I believe we won't see too much of a drop before 9 a.m. Eastern Time. However, after 9 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll experience something a little different than what we usually discuss, and that is because I do feel that they are a little bit overvalued right now due to what I was just discussing. Post-drop, we often experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. Sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired products due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 10% increase of pre-drop prices post-drop. This isn't always the case, but majority of the time it is. Almost always on this channel, we discuss that it is going to be the case when there is an upcoming sneaker that we are discussing, but this time, I actually don't believe we'll be seeing that 10% increase post-drop. If that was the case, we would see some sizes in the upper 400s and some in the low 500s. I do not see this happening at all, but rather quite the contrary. So this is definitely a little different than usual, at least what I'm predicting as of now could very well be the contrary, of course. But after Yeezy Supply does sell out, prices may not be affected yet, but throughout the afternoon, when the Adidas app raffle wins start going out, I do believe we may start seeing a slight decay in value. I believe that over the course of the weekend, this decay can be around 10% by Monday morning. Assuming an average of a 10% decrease, sizes could potentially settle around $370 on average average by around Monday morning. This is an average, so the larger size will likely be less than that in the lower to mid 300 range, while the sizes under 8 will likely be in the low 400 range. Now let's discuss what prices will look like once shipments begin to go out in the 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation, considering the stock should be quite high on these, especially on the Adidas app and Yeezy supply. This will certainly have a pretty drastic effect, but nothing to concern over. I am still very confident that these will be profitable with a subpar margin, even when you do get your pairs in hand. In this 1 to 2 week range, we normally see a decrease of about 10 to 15% with shoes with decent stock like this. Normally, I would side on the upper end for these, but since we already likely will be seeing a decent drop over the weekend, and we won't probably be seeing that impulsivity effect take place, I would side towards the lower end of that decrease rather than the 15%. I'd side more towards the 10%. This will then leave us with about $330 to $340, and this is where I do see them reaching their trough and plateauing for a little while, like many 700s do. Since this is an average, again, some sizes will be less, some sizes will be more, so the sizes under 8 will likely be in the mid to upper 300 range, while some of the larger sizes will be in the low 300 range, some potentially even tapping into that upper 200 range. Since these aren't retailing for $300, I think sellers might be a little more comfortable to dip a little lower. Now that the average price ranges at those points in time are evident though, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much over specific periods of time. Traditionally, Yeezys with high demand that have decent resale already always tend to rise. The only time this isn't the case is when they're overbought or overvalued. We saw this on the Yeezy 350 Frozen Yellow release, and this was regardless of the re-release that was upcoming later, because at the time no one really knew about it and they were still decaying in value. Before any of those were announced, these were already not going anywhere because of how overvalued they were initially. Do not expect this to be the case with these after they do already drop in value from the pairs going into circulation. Assuming they do drop down to the range I did state, I do think that this is a relatively fair valuation for these, being a 700 V1. From that point, I do expect them to eventually see an increase in value, but at a very slow pace. If they don't get down to a range I did state, then the rate of increase will likely seem non-existent if they don't already start decreasing. Hence, you should expect them to increase, assuming they do reach that trough I was discussing in about 2 weeks. Specifically, I'm not expecting a rapid increase at all, far from that in fact, and long term, I really don't see the amount they're likely to increase by to be justified for a long-term hold. I see this release being very similar to what we saw on the Inertia 700 release very long ago. There was a fair amount of pre-hype, just like these. When the pairs went into circulation though, they dropped by a significant amount in value. And that's going to transition me into the next section, the hold margins. Will these actually be worth your time, even though I do expect them to increase in value? Eventually, the Inertias did end up increasing, but it's not a very notable increase for the amount at least, considering the fact that they were going for around $320 at their trough anyway, and you could have sold them quickly for around $340 to $350 if you sold them as soon as you got your shipment in, or even earlier than that. So for the average size to increase only about $60 to $80 for a pair that you could have immediately sold for $345, that doesn't seem like an efficient hold in my opinion. There are definitely better opportunities out there than that. However, on the other hand, the sizes under 8 did begin to see a much better increase on the other hand. For that reason, I see the sizes under 8 being a completely different situation, and this happens to be the case when it comes to a vast majority of 700, 350s, and 500s. If these do eventually play out like the Inertias played out in a year, they won't be a terrible hold for sizes under 8. However, it's still not the best hold. For that reason, I give the large sizes 8 and up a 2 out of 10 hold value, being terrible. On the other hand, I'd give any sizes under 8 a 5 out of 10 hold value, assuming they do settle in the upper 300 to mid 300 range in about 2 weeks. Now, if you really want some solid margins on holds, feel free to check out this video along with a further breakdown of what I'm actually discussing regarding the margins on these and why it matters so much. For this reason, I'll be quick selling all of my pairs. The sizes under 8 aren't a bad hold, unlike the large sizes, but I do still feel that my money is better spent on other holds rather than these. There are just far too many many opportunities out there with much more potential. In conclusion, yes, they will go up eventually, especially the sizes under 8, but I will be quick selling these still just because I know my money is better spent holding other products that have much better potential marginally. Remember, if you do plan to quick sell, you must ship within 2 business days for StockX and Go. If you check tracking, be sure to stay on top of that. You can actually sell them before they do arrive at your house, or if you want, you could also sell on eBay with 30-day handling enabled. And just a quick note that I always mention for people who do intend on holding anyway with low capital, you should never hold anything if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you need money to go for all drops, sell them right after the drop no matter what you think about these before even more of them do go into circulation. But anyway, that'll conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you did enjoy or you perhaps learned a thing or two. Also, subscribe and enable post notifications to stay 100% updated on all hyped releases, and feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast residential proxies and pre-verified Nike sneakers accounts. Last but not least, make sure to follow KeithAdam10 and Personals For You so you guys always stay updated on all urgent info like I was discussing today. With that though, I'll see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day.